The drums of the palace beat heavily in the early morning, calling the villagers to gather. A whisper spread through the crowd like harmattan fire. The king's gold is missing. Guards marched into the courtyard, dragging a young maid named Ifua by her arm. Her simple wrapper was dusty, her eyes wide with fear. "She is the thief," one of the guards shouted, tossing a small, empty golden box at her feet. Gasps filled the air. Afua had always been known as gentle and hardworking. She swept the palace floors, fetched water, and served food with humility. Yet now she stood accused of the worst crime against the throne. The queen mother looked at her with sharp eyes. "Girl, do you know what it means to steal from the king?" Tears welled in Afua's eyes. She shook her head desperately. "I did not take it, my queen. I swear on the spirits of my ancestors, I am innocent." But the people murmured among themselves. Some believed her. Others pointed fingers. After all, how could a poor maid resist the shining temptation of gold? The king raised his staff, and silence fell. If she is guilty, the ancestors will not hide it. If she is innocent, the truth will reveal itself in time. Efua's knees trembled. She knew she was trapped in a storm much bigger than herself. The sun blazed over the palace courtyard as the drums continued to echo. Villagers crowded closer, whispering about Efua's fate. Some pitied her. Others sharpened their tongues with gossip. The palace guards forced her to kneel before the king's council. Her head was bowed, but her heart pounded like the beating of war drums. "Speak," thundered the chief elder. "Why should we believe you did not steal? The gold was found missing the very morning you were on duty in the royal chambers." Efua's lips trembled. "My lords, I carried water to wash the queen's feet. I cleaned the floors, but I never touched the king's treasure. I swear before heaven, I am innocent." The queen mother's eyes narrowed. "Words are cheap, child. Where is your proof?" Efua looked around desperately. Proof? What proof could a poor maid have against the palace's accusations? Then one of the guards stepped forward, holding out a shiny bracelet. "My king, we found this in her sleeping mat. This belongs to the queen's chest of gold." The crowd erupted with gasps and shouts. Some jeered. "A thief! A thief in the palace!" Afua's eyes widened. She shook her head fiercely. "No, that is not mine. Someone put it there, I swear it." But her cries were drowned in the noise. Even some of the elders turned their faces away, ashamed for her. The king raised his staff once more, and the crowd fell silent. His deep voice carried over the air. "If she is lying, the ancestors will curse her. If she is innocent, then let the ancestors fight for her." Afua's chest heaved as tears rolled down her face. She felt the weight of the entire village pressing against her. But somewhere in the crowd, a figure watched silently. A figure who knew more about the missing gold than anyone dared to imagine. The king's eyes grew dark with suspicion. He turned to the elders and said, "Let it not be said that this palace condemns without proof. Tonight, the ancestors themselves will decide this girl's fate." A hush fell over the courtyard. Everyone knew what that meant. The oracle's test. It was an ancient ritual feared by all, one that had cleared the innocent and destroyed the guilty for generations. The queen mother leaned closer to the king. "My lord, she is a mere maid. Do not waste the oracle's time." But the king shook his head. "If she is guilty, the ancestors will show it. If she is innocent, then let the truth protect her." Guards dragged Afua to her feet. She stumbled, still protesting her innocence. "Please, I beg you, I did not steal. Someone is trying to destroy me." But no one listened. By sunset, the villagers gathered at the sacred grove outside the palace. Torches burned brightly, shadows dancing across the ancient baobab trees. At the center of the clearing lay the oracle's stone altar, carved with markings older than memory. The palace priest approached, his staff rattling with cowrie shells. His voice was low and commanding. "Tonight, we call upon the ancestors to reveal truth. The accused will drink from the calabash of justice. If her heart is clean, she will live. If her hands are stained with theft, her body will not withstand it." Ifua's knees buckled. A clay calabash filled with bitter herbs and sacred water was placed before her. The villagers murmured, half expecting her to collapse the moment she drank. Her hands shook as she lifted it. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Ancestors, if I am guilty, let me perish. But if I am innocent, protect me." The crowd gasped. Silence hung heavy in the night air as they waited. Afua's body trembled violently. She fell forward to the ground. The villagers cried out, some covering their faces, others shouting, "Guilty!" But then, her body stopped shaking. Slowly, painfully, Afua pushed herself back up. Her eyes glowed with determination as she whispered, "I am innocent." The priest staggered back, his staff nearly slipping from his hands. The ancestors, they protect her. The villagers erupted in shock. If the ancestors had spared her, then who truly stole the gold? And in that tense moment, the Queen Mother's gaze flickered, just for an instant, toward one of the palace attendants standing quietly in the shadows. The next morning, the palace gates opened with a heavy creak, and tension hung thick in the air. Villagers crowded outside, desperate to see what justice would unfold within the king's walls. Inside, the king himself led the search. He was not a ruler who trusted whispers. He demanded proof. Armed guards followed him into every chamber, overturning baskets, lifting mats, and unsealing clay pots. Afua stood silently, her hands clasped tightly, watching with wide eyes. Every corner of her room was inspected once more. Not a single coin appeared. But when the king turned to Kojo's quarters, the young man trembled visibly. His chamber was modest compared to the rest of the attendants, yet too many eyes were on him for him to hide his fear. The guards tore through his belongings. They upturned a wooden chest at the foot of his bed, and there, glinting under the morning sun, lay a heavy pouch of gold coins wrapped in fine silk. Gasps erupted. The guards froze. One of them raised the pouch high for all to see. "My king, the stolen gold!" Kojo collapsed to his knees, his lips quivering. "No, no, this is not mine. Someone placed it here." But the king darkened like a storm. His voice boomed. "Silence! Only a guilty heart reveals itself before judgment is passed." The Queen Mother pressed a hand to her lips, her eyes narrowing with unreadable emotion. Was it sorrow, or something else entirely? Afua could hardly breathe. She had been vindicated, yet a nagging thought pierced her mind. Was Kojo truly the mastermind, or a pawn in someone else's game? The king turned to his court. "This boy has brought shame upon my house. By sunset, he will face trial before the ancestors, and if found guilty, he shall be punished by the laws of our land." The crowd roared in approval. Yet amidst the noise, Kojo locked eyes with Afua, whispering hoarsely as the guards dragged him away. "You don't understand. I am not the one you should fear." Afua's blood ran cold. That night, Afua lay awake on her straw mat, Kojo's final words echoing in her ears. "I am not the one you should fear." The palace was quiet, save for the distant calls of night birds and the soft crackle of oil lamps. But Afua's heart pounded too loudly for sleep. She had seen Kojo's fear. It wasn't the look of a thief caught red-handed, but of someone ensnared in a trap far greater than himself. The next morning, while most attendants busied themselves with preparations for Kojo's trial, Afua slipped into the palace gardens. She had noticed something strange the day before. The Queen Mother's eyes lingering too long on the pouch of gold, as though she recognized it. Hiding behind a carved pillar, Afua overheard a hushed conversation. The Queen Mother's trusted maid whispered, "My queen, all is in place. No one will ever suspect." The Queen Mother's voice was low, sharp as a blade. "Good. The boy will take the fall, and the king will remain blind to the truth. No one must ever know where the gold truly came from." Ifua's hands trembled as she covered her mouth. Her suspicion was correct. The theft had been orchestrated from the highest seat in the palace itself. But how could she expose such a powerful figure? Who would dare believe the word of a poor maid over the Queen Mother? That evening, Kojo was dragged before the royal court, his wrists bound with rope. Villagers filled the courtyard, chanting for justice. The king sat tall upon his stool, his staff of authority in hand. As the trial began, Ifua felt the weight of a choice pressing on her chest. She could remain silent and let Kojo be punished, or she could speak, risking everything, even her life, to reveal what she knew. Her heart raced as she stepped forward. The crowd gasped. "My king," she said, her voice quivering but strong, "before you condemn this boy, you must hear the truth I have uncovered." The entire courtyard fell silent. All eyes turned to Afua, the poor maid now daring to challenge the throne itself. And from the Queen Mother's seat came a sharp, piercing glare, one that could kill if eyes held blades. The king leaned forward on his stool, his eyes narrowing at Afua. "Speak, child. What truth do you claim to hold?" Ifua's knees trembled, but she drew in a deep breath. "My king, The gold was not stolen by this boy. I overheard a conversation in the gardens. The Queen Mother's maid confessed that the theft was arranged, that it was all a trap. A stunned silence rippled through the courtyard. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. Some gasped aloud. The Queen Mother's face turned to stone. "Lies," she hissed, rising to her feet. Her golden bracelets clinked angrily as she pointed at Afua. "How dare a lowly maid soil my name with such filthy accusations?" The king's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Afua, these are grave words. Do you have proof?" Afua swallowed hard. Proof? This was the very thing she lacked. But she remembered something. The Queen Mother's maid had spoken of a hidden place. Afua stepped closer to the throne and said boldly, "Search the Queen Mother's chambers, and you will find the truth. The missing gold is not gone. It was hidden, waiting to be used." The courtyard erupted in shouts. Some cried for the king to act, others shouted for Afua to be silenced. The Queen Mother's face twisted with fury, but behind her eyes there was a flicker of fear. "Enough!" the king thundered, striking his staff against the ground. The noise silenced the crowd. He looked from Afua to the Queen Mother, suspicion now stirring in his gaze. "Guard," he commanded. "Search the Queen Mother's chambers." Gasps filled the air. The Queen Mother tried to protest, but the king silenced her with a wave of his hand. The guards left swiftly, while the entire court waited in breathless anticipation. Afua's hands clenched at her sides, her heart beating wildly. She knew everything depended on what the guards found. Moments later, the guards returned, carrying a wooden chest, its lid creaking open to reveal the glittering gold inside. The courtyard exploded with noise. Some cheered, others screamed in shock. All eyes turned on the Queen Mother. The king's face darkened like a storm. "Explain this," he demanded. But the Queen Mother, caught at last, could only stand frozen, her mouth opening and closing without a word. And Efua, the poor maid who dared to speak, now stood as the unlikely savior of the boy who would have been unjustly condemned. The silence in the courtyard was unbearable. Every gaze rested on the king as he stood tall, his staff gleaming under the afternoon sun. Afua's knees nearly gave way, her hands clutched together in desperate prayer. Finally, the king spoke, his voice steady but heavy with sorrow. "Theft is a grave crime in this kingdom, but betrayal, by one entrusted with the palace's heart, is far greater. The gods have shown us the truth." He pointed his staff at the Queen Mother. Gasps spread through the courtyard like wildfire. "You," the king declared, "are guilty of greed and deceit. You shamed this palace and sought to destroy an innocent soul." The Queen Mother let out a sharp cry. "No, you cannot do this to me. I am your mother in all but blood. I held this palace together when you were but a child." But the king's face was like stone. "Your years of service cannot excuse your betrayal. You will no longer hold power in this palace. From this day forth, you are stripped of your titles and banished from the royal court." The crowd erupted in shock. Some whispered in disbelief, others nodded solemnly. Guards stepped forward, but the Queen Mother shrieked, her voice echoing through the courtyard. "You will regret this, all of you. Without me, this palace will fall apart. Mark my words." Dragged to her feet, she fought against the guards, but the judgment had been sealed. Afua's eyes brimmed with tears, not of sorrow, but of relief. For the first time, the weight on her chest lifted. But just as the Queen Mother was being led away, she turned her head and hissed toward Afua. "Do not think this is over, girl. The ancestors may not be finished with you yet." A chill swept through Efua's body. The victory was hers, but the shadow of the Queen Mother's curse lingered. The courtyard slowly emptied, but Efua remained standing, unable to believe what had just unfolded. A servant, once accused and humiliated, had now been proven innocent before the entire kingdom. The king stepped down from his throne and walked toward her. His shadow fell over her trembling form, but his eyes were warm. "You have suffered much, Afua," he said gently, "but you stood firm in truth. The ancestors favor you. From today, you will no longer be a mere maid in this palace." Gasps filled the air again. Afua looked up, her lips parting in disbelief. "You will serve as the keeper of the queen's treasury," the king continued, placing a golden bangle on her wrist. "For only one who has tasted injustice can guard the treasures of the palace with a pure heart." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. Efua's hands shook as she touched the bangle. The same people who had mocked her now bowed in respect. But even in that moment of triumph, her heart felt heavy. She remembered the Queen Mother's final words, words that carried venom and a warning. That night, as the palace settled into uneasy silence, Afua sat alone in her new quarters. She looked out at the moonlit sky, whispering a prayer. "O ancestors, if my journey has just begun, give me strength. If storms are still to come, let me not fall." A sudden gust of wind rattled the wooden shutters. Somewhere deep within the palace walls, a low, haunting laughter echoed. Afua shivered. The Queen Mother was gone, but her shadow still lingered, and the question remained, was this truly the end, or just the beginning of a greater test?